feel like that's happening. And then when he comes on, you're going to pin him. So.
Right.
Change out of his jammies.
What's that?
So they have to change out of his jammies.
Yeah, I know. I know. What's that? Oh, that's okay. 'Cause once I pin him, it'll just be him, right? I think. What is the message it's getting now?
It's saying it's being recorded like
Oh.
another participant.
Oh,
Here
I
we
said,
go.
okay. Okay. Here we go.
About that.
Okay. Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. I'm so sorry. I wrote down the time wrong, actually. I thought we had another 45 minutes.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here. I don't know how well you can see the room out there. But I'm just going to give a very quick and brief introduction, and then I'll turn over to you, and I'm hoping we'll have some time. We end at 55, so that's like 40, basically 40 minutes from now. So hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A as well. And I can cue you with time if you need it. But let me just say, we're really thrilled. We're really excited you're here. And I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name right. Julian Aguon. Am I pronouncing
That's good enough. Yeah.
Okay, feel free to correct me. People get my name wrong all the time. Is the founder of Blue Ocean Law, which specializes in human and indigenous rights, a law firm in Guam, and self-determination and environmental justice in the Pacific. He's a writer, a poet. I have a copy of his most recent book, which you're welcome to come up and take a look at, called No Country for Eight-Spot Butterflies, which is full of poetry and essay, and it's a beautiful book. And his work is really at the intersection of indigenous rights, racial justice, climate justice, especially as it relates to threats to small island states and territories. And you can add correct as needed. And I just want to say one last thing, because although we're observing Indigenous Peoples Day on Monday, this is our first formal event at our school, and we're hoping to kind of set the record straight here and going forward. And that as a history teacher, we tend to, if at all, treat Indigenous peoples as something of the past. But as Julian will attest, Indigenous people are present, have always been, are resilient and resistant. And so we're so excited for you to be here. So I'll turn things to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And my deepest apologies again for being late. Hi, everybody. My name is Julian. Can you all hear me well?
Yes.
Great. So I just want to, because we're a little behind schedule, I want to go right into it. I want to do two really, really short readings from the book. Does that sound good? And then we can get right into it. Okay, this piece is entitled Mugu. They say if you take the mugu from a dog's eyes and rub it into your own, you can see the dead. They lied. I know because I tried. After Dad died, rubbed more mugu in my eyes than I care to admit. And that's not the crazy thing. The crazy thing is I didn't have a dog. So I settled for strays. I chased those poor dogs all around the neighborhood because beggars can't be choosers. Because desperation, like belief, is a powerful thing. And because I was 10, I could not yet put 2 and 2 together. I somehow thought if I could see my dad, I could speak to him too. Ask him all my questions. Do you like heaven? Are you and God friends? Do you miss us? Do you miss me? Do you still have a body? Is it chubby like before cancer or skinny like after? What's your favorite food? Mine is cheese. Is yours? Is that because Saka, our family name on your side, means rat? What about Aguon? My teacher said Aguon refers to the family of tubers, as in taros and yams. Why is tuber such a weird word? And how are we related to taros and yams? How exactly? Can you help mom? All she does is walk around sad and cry in that scary way where she shakes but don't make no sound. Also, she faints a lot. Also, can you help Ria? She don't talk no more. She don't laugh. It's too quiet in the house. Can you come back and make it noisy again? I never saw him, never got to ask him all my questions. The medical term for mugu is room, a fancy word for eye gunk, the crust that collects in the corners of our eyes sometimes after a good night's sleep. A natural part of healthy eye function, doctors say, nothing more. But then, doctors don't know everything. This piece is titled More Right. My Aunt Lou told me once that it is easier for our people to believe in magic than it is for others. As soon as she said it, I knew it was true. I knew because that day she'd taken my sister and me, plus 2 of our cousins, to a beach on the northern coast of the island where the sand is shaped like stars. We got lost in those stars. We bent over their tiny bodies for hours, inspecting them as closely as we could without a magnifying glass, wishing we had one, even if only one, even if it meant we had to share. We made star castles. We cartwheeled over constellations. We ran around and fell down on a blanket of stars. We took turns burying each other in a beautiful graveyard of celestial bodies. My aunt's husband, a white man from Australia, explained later that they weren't stars at all, but rather foraminifera, tiny single-celled creatures who live at the bottom of the sea, whose exoskeletons wash ashore when they die. Forum sands, he said. He was right, of course. But my aunt was more right, because eyes wide with wonder is a perfectly good definition of magic. Because magic could just as easily mean stargazing in the midday sun while looking down. Because we had so little, yet somehow we had it all. Thank you so much. Yeah, so those are just 2, I would argue, the shortest pieces in the book. I want to talk a little bit about the sort of the book tour that I've just come off of, and also the book that I've just written. He held it up. This book doesn't have a jacket, but it's called there it is. It's called No Country for AIDS About Butterflies. And I wrote this book almost as a testament to the survival of my people, the Indigenous Chamorro people of Guam. Right now, as I speak to you in 2022, my people are bracing ourselves for gigantic social and environmental destruction. The US military, as I speak, is bulldozing the very last remaining pristine limestone forests. So these are forests that took thousands of years to evolve. And these forests are also impossibly beautiful. And now they are being bulldozed in order for the US military to construct a live fire training range complex. And this is a massive live fire training range complex that is going to be used by thousands of US Marines being sent from Okinawa to Guam. One of the 5 ranges is a 59-acre multi-purpose machine gun range. And that is the range that is causing all of the environmental destruction that I write about in this very book, because there's a host of our other than human relatives, and as an Indigenous person, we really take care of our other than human relatives. And one of the species, there's about 23 imperiled species. And when I say that, I mean, these are various species from a fruit bat, which is like a giant. Has anyone seen a fruit bat? It's like a giant, like a like flying squirrel. I don't know for like, but it's a fruit bat. It's a slender-toed gecko, a starling, um, three different species of tree snails. So these are really like a lot of them. Most of them are really, really small organisms. They're really, really small animals, and it's their home. That is the particular limestone forest that is right now being bulldozed. Yeah, I mean, when I left Guam to begin this book tour, the last visit I paid was to this brand new base, and I saw the beginning of the bulldozing. I saw about 20 different machines there, and they all bear the name Caterpillar. And for me, that's when I was like, I was really clear that I have to do this national book tour. In part because it's bitterly ironic that the same machines that are ripping out the limestone from the forest floor, these same machines bear the name Caterpillar, but it's actually that exact creature's habitat that they're destroying. So our endemic, which is means native, our native and endangered butterfly on Guam is called the Mariana 8-spot butterfly. In my language, she is called the ababang, and she is in the gravest danger of all because she can only lay her eggs on 2 tiny plants. These are like the most delicate little things, and these plants grow in between the crevices of the limestone rock, the same rock that the machines are bulldozing. So right now, what we are seeing is that we have our people, as Indigenous people, we have our ear to the ground, and we are trying to listen, and try to take instruction from her and all of the other sort of life, So you should also know I'm a full-time lawyer. I don't know if that was part of the introduction. I think it was that I founded Blue Ocean Law. So I kind of wear 2 hats. I kind of have two sort of like separate lives. In some ways, I'm a human rights lawyer all day long. I founded Blue Ocean Law in part to fight for the rights of my people, but actually to fight for the rights of Indigenous peoples throughout the Pacific region. So my firm, we have worked on climate change. We have worked on extractive industries. We have worked on actually the national liberation movements of those peoples who are still colonized. We have represented governments, presidents, like we represented the president, like the head of state of various countries in my part of the world. We've represented nonprofit organizations, community organizations. We've worked in Papua New Guinea, Fiji, Vanuatu, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, the Federated States of Micronesia, Guam, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, just a ton of jurisdictions. And we, in all of those jurisdictions, we are trying to stop the spread of really, really massive, sort of environmental sort of devastation. I'll just give you sort of one more example and then come back to the butterfly. In the communities of Papua New Guinea that we've worked with, we have been trying with activists to stop multinational corporations looking to mine the mineral wealth at the bottom of the sea. I don't know if any of you have heard of the whole new industry called seabed mining. It's basically this understanding that there is over $8 trillion worth of minerals on the bottom of the ocean floor. But it just so happens that those minerals are almost all of them are located in and around Pacific Island countries' seafloors. So it's all been concentrated in this one part of the world, my part of the world. So we have been working for almost 10 years straight to actually defend the rights of Indigenous peoples who are already experiencing the terrible consequences of this mining. And the mining hasn't even started yet. I'll give you just one specific example of how we do our work. There is a company, it's a Canadian company, that was mining, that was exploring only the waters off the coast of Papua New Guinea. And they were looking for human rights arguments, human rights legal handles to challenge what was happening. So after being in community with all of these people on the ground, we actually discovered something really powerful. That is, there were 3 remote villages off the coast of Papua New Guinea that still adhere or practice the ancient cultural practice of shark calling. Has anyone heard of shark calling? Anyone in the room? Okay, essentially, this is an ancient practice. It's thousands of years old. And it's a rite of passage. You know what that is, a rite of passage for young men in 3 different villages. So what we learned was that the mining company's operations was creating so much dust and so much noise that it was actually chasing, because, you know, these are vibrations under the sea. So they are chasing the sharks from their traditional grounds. So what that meant in reality was that the people of those villages could no longer practice their culture, which part of it was shark calling. And with shark calling, I'll give you a very simplified explanation. There are men from certain villages in Papua New Guinea who have been trained. They have a series of chants. You know what chants are? Like, these are just chants that they have learned, have been passed down for thousands of years. And they also have a device, like a very sophisticated use of like the coconut shell with bamboo and a third piece of equipment. And it perfectly mimics a school of fish, the shark's favorite school of fish. And so through chants and this device, they go out in the water on their canoes, single man canoes, and then they lure the sharks from the deep. And then they catch those sharks by hand. This is like, it's like, it only happens, this whole cultural practice only happens in one place in the world, and that is in Papua New Guinea, in the precise way that it happens. So these 3 villages were in distress because the old fishermen they are terrified because they don't know what a new rite of passage would look like. This is the test when a boy transitions into a man. This is the quintessential rite of passage, as it was directly imperiled by the operations of this Canadian mining company. So that is sort of the work that we do at Blue Ocean Law. We work to assist Indigenous communities throughout the Pacific fight back. And when I say fight back, I mean fight gigantic corporations as well as their own governments, when those governments are betraying their rights, especially their rights over their traditional lands, territories, and resources. So yeah, so that is the work that we do all throughout the Pacific. But coming back to Guam, that is the work that we are doing now. So we have lost too much in Guam, and the 8-spot butterfly is in danger. So we have filed a lawsuit. So 2 things are happening. I'm writing this book and I'm going on this book tour, sort of educating sort of the American public about sort of the unique harms that are happening that don't have to happen, that we can stop. We can, like, even if the US military wishes to proceed with what it's doing, it can do it in a way that's less environmentally invasive and destructive. So we are doing that kind of work. So I'm doing that kind of work as a writer, but also as a lawyer. We have been filing suits. So what we are doing almost all day long, when I'm not writing at night, in the day, I'm suing people. So that's essentially what we're doing. So we have just won our first major battle. Literally, the news just came in recently about we successfully protected and forced the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which is a federal agency in the U.S. government that's entrusted with protecting endangered species. We forced them to designate critical habitat for these 23 species. So we just won that Endangered Species Act case. And we're looking at another one. I'll just quickly mention it because that other one, and then of course we can open all of this up. But the other one I want to mention is the humpback whales. I'm not sure to what extent you all know about humpback whales. They're found throughout the world, but in Guam and in the islands due north of Guam, there is a really beautiful nesting area of humpback whales. And so now, starting in the next 2 months, I'm going to be turning my attention with my firm, my team, towards figuring out how to protect those whales that nest in that area, because those are singing whales too. I mean, like, this is the reason why I'm really doing this work is I believe every time a species goes extinct, all of us become poorer for it. All of us become more impoverished every time we lose, a species on this planet. And so that is why we're trying to protect these singing humpback whales, because, humpback whales are known for their beautiful songs. And so we are trying to protect them next. But yeah, so that is the work that I do as a writer and as a lawyer, especially with the work with my firm, Blue Ocean Law. And I am definitely happy to open this up to more of a conversational kind of thing, especially you guys. I'm totally free to answer any kind of questions you have about the book, about the tour I just finished. You should know tomorrow is my last stop. I'm in Hawaii now. If you can't tell, I'm in a hotel. Yeah, this is my 7th and last stop on a national book tour. I was in New York, San Francisco, Boston, Pomona, Portland, and now Hawaii. So yes, I'm totally happy to talk to you about anything, the book or the legal work or my life as an Indigenous activist.
Thank you. We provided students with a packet of information beforehand, so we collected a lot of questions, and they should be pretty informed. But so I have some written down. But let me see, show of hands if there's something you want to ask now. Otherwise, I'll go to one of the pre-written questions. So just stand up, and I'll repeat the question for you as well to make sure you can hear it. All right. While you're putting those together, I'm going to start with a question from Victoria. What's your favorite physical place in the island of Guam?
Ooh, that's kind of cool. There's like 2 places that I love. Okay. One is I'm going to just break the rule and answer 2 places. So one is my aunt's beach. She lives in the south of the island, and she has just like a humble little home, but she has a lot. She got this whole sort of beach line area, and so we go there as a family. Even a large extended family, we have all of our barbecues there. Every time, like one of my cousins has has a kid, the first birthday party is usually there. It's just a ridiculously beautiful beach. It's so gorgeous. And then the other area that I've grown to love the most is just my home where I live. Basically, I could have lived in my family's original village, but I chose not to. So I had been looking for about 14 years for just the right place to move to build my own home. And I did that 3 years ago. I found a place where you can hear the ocean. It's on the cliff, but you can hear the ocean, and it is so loud. And I live in a jungle, for lack of a better word. I sort of live in a very jungly area, so I really have no neighbors to the left or to the right. And so I'm visited by a host of other sort of other than human relatives, which is beautiful, including I'll just like mention one of those. One of my favorite sort of neighbors is there's these gigantic monitor lizards. Have you heard of them? They look like little dragons, sort of like they're massive monitor lizards, and they're black with neon green spots. But they just like hang out around the house, and it's just a beautiful place to live. And it's right above the ocean, and the ocean is so loud. And there is no sound on earth that I love more than the sound of the sea.
Wonderful. Thank you. Again, just please raise your hands and you can ask about anything that Julian spoke about or that you saw in the packet or just something that came up. So other questions? Other questions? Someone back there had a question.
I guess I'll Harrison.
Yes. Yes, go ahead.
What was your greatest challenge in your legal fight you've been doing?
What was your greatest challenge in the most recent battle that you just described? And maybe just go into that a little bit in detail.
Sure. My biggest challenge was not a legal one. It was an intellectual one, and you could say emotional one. I'm just deeply disappointed with the way the U.S. federal agencies that are entrusted to protect all of these endangered species, they have largely abandoned their job description. They're just not doing their job. I mean, it is crazy to me that the U.S. you should know this. Let me just back up and explain who I'm talking about. So NOAA, which is basically the U.S. federal agency in charge with protecting life at sea. And then there's Fish and Wildlife entrusted with protecting life on Earth, both marine and terrestrial. What's happened in the last decade that we've followed and we've been tracking all of their decisions, essentially both agencies have given up. They have stopped fighting the U.S. military because the U.S. military is just a different department of government. They still have to comply with federal environmental law. The U.S. military, despite how powerful it may be, it actually just like anyone else, it has to comply with the Endangered Species Act, meaning it cannot engage in activities that destroy the ecological habitats of these creatures. And what I was so disappointed with throughout the entire litigation, and that's just a fancier word for the lawsuit process, what I was so sad and frustrated and actually outraged about is that I saw all of these things that were being signed by the federal agencies where they essentially gave a waiver. You know what that is? Essentially a waiver. They said both agencies have given, in effect, a waiver to the US military. They're like, even if we acknowledge that you're going to just injure all of these creatures, we're still going to let you do it. And so because they have the power under federal law to give a waiver, but they shouldn't have given these waivers, but they did. So I'll just give you one concrete example that broke my heart, and it breaks my heart still, and it's why I'm still in this legal battle. I think we tried to do the math one day, me and my team, and it came out to like 66,000 marine mammals. The US military plans to militarize and play war games. And when I say war games is not just shooting guns, but sinking ships and like making them go to sea, doing active and passive sonar, so basically what they're doing is they're about, and this hasn't started yet, you all, but it's about to start. So we're trying to look and examine a way to stop them. But basically the US military plans to meaning to adversely impact, meaning to harm or injure, if not outright kill, 66,000 sea creatures, dolphins, whales, sea turtles. I mean, it's insanely gigantic to think about. It's almost too big to think about. But that is exactly what has been my greatest challenge, though. Like, it is just the heartbreak of that. My challenge, I'm a very good lawyer. I'm very good at what I do. But the thing that is hard to manage is a broken heart. It's a challenge. It always is. Every single day of my work, I am navigating around my own brokenheartedness as I do my work.
Thank you. I want to just encourage you all to raise your hands as your questions come. And I want to make sure that at the end, maybe our last question could be some of the things that you're feeling good about and seeing as positive on the horizon. So let's try to end on that note. So just interrupt me if you have questions, but there were a number of questions that people submitted in advance just about your thoughts about the relationship of Guam to the United States historically as a Chamorro Indigenous person. I think as students read about, disproportionately people from Guam serve in the military, but don't really get to vote for representation in Congress, for the president, and for the actions that the military takes. So I wonder if you could just talk about your feelings about that relationship, and do you see statehood as a outcome you'd like? Would that make you feel uncomfortable, mixed?
Great. So basically, the nature of the relationship, to be frank, is a colonial one. This is a colonial relationship. Under international law, Guam is one of those territories that are formally considered by the United Nations as a colony. So we are an American colony, meaning a colony under American rule. So I'll be really specific about that. So even under US law, Guam is considered an unincorporated territory. So this is a place that exists that occupies its own special place in constitutional law, meaning the US federal government can hold on to Guam as it has for 123 years. The US has been in control of Guam for over 100 years. And it can choose which portions of the US Constitution to extend. I don't know if you all know this, but this is quite deep stuff. I mean, meaning like we didn't even vote for our own governor until like the 70s. We had a national security clearance policy in place from the Navy. The Guam was run almost as a naval ship for several decades. We had no rights. The Constitution didn't apply at all. And even the nature of our US citizenship is not constitutionally protected, meaning theoretically, it is conceivable that it would be perfectly constitutional for the US Congress to withdraw citizenship. To the extent that they can extend citizenship, they can also withdraw it. So we don't know. Right now, in Congress, everyone, like these decisions will be made by people we cannot vote for. That is the definition of a colonial arrangement. So like, for example, with the military buildup, if we were in California or even Hawaii, we would actually approach our congressperson, right? Who has a vote, who can trade on that vote, has power, a sufficient amount of power to at least play this game called congressional politics. Our one person who gets elected by us is non-voting. So that person doesn't even get to enter the game. Meaning they're a spectator in the game of congressional politics, which is exactly why we are so outraged and frustrated about what's happening, is because we cannot vote for the people who are making all of the decisions about the firing range, the decisions about the Marines, the decisions about the sea turtles, and all of these decisions are made by people we cannot vote for. And this is a problem. This, you know, and America, and of course, you all know that Guam is not alone in this. Puerto Rico is also a US colony, or if you want to call an unincorporated territory of the United States. So is the US Virgin Islands. So is American Samoa. So actually, America does have a larger colonies problem. These are colonies that have never been found away. So this is something that you all should know, just like the overall history of that is something that's really, really important to know. So I'm glad that you asked the question. I can get into even more detail, but I think that's probably enough detail on that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we have like 10 minutes left, so let's try to get a few more. Again, please, just there's something you want to ask now, go ahead, yes.
So in the video we watched, there was something about how there was a law stating that like the foreign territories didn't have these like rights, but it was like for a short amount of time, just until like the people are used to like American culture and all that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of like the difference that's like now, even 123 years later, we still have those rights?
Did you hear that?
Yeah, oh yeah. That's a student asking that question? I can't see. Oh wow, your students are so smart. So basically, yeah, this was a legal assumption. So you should all know, at the turn of the century, when the US Supreme Court decided a line of cases called the insular cases, which is the line of cases that established the doctrine known as the territorial incorporation doctrine in 1901, 1902, 1922, in the early 1900s. This is when all those decisions were made. And at the time, there was a working constitutional assumption, and that assumption was as follows: that any territory newly acquired by the US government was eventually going to transition into statehood. So there was a legal assumption baked into the procedural sort of process of this country, that any sort of and of course the country expanded, westward expansion, like any time that the country gathered up these territories, it then put them on a path towards statehood. Eventually, so your student, whoever you are correct. That was a legal assumption at the time. What we have is legal mischief. All these 123 years later, we have a legal fiction that was put in place in part to say, once the people of the colonies are prepared culturally, linguistically, they're educated in the American system, like eventually all that preparation will lead to a change in constitutional status, where eventually we begin all of the trappings of US citizenship and all of the benefits. We'll be brought into the American political family. That never happened. That never happened. So that assumption no longer holds. So meaning when Congress and the US Supreme Court actually decided it's okay that Congress exercise unchecked power, unfettered power in the territories, but it's only okay if it's temporary. Because we cannot, and this was in the Supreme Court, you should find all those cases in the language from the US Supreme Court. The assumption, all that power was okay because it had a short shelf life. Eventually, we would be free. So now you have an assumption that or the facts on the ground really counter sort of that assumption, meaning the US really has no intention to let go of these colonies. Therefore, it's morally and politically imperative that we change the constitutional status of these places. And there are lawyers, you should know, who are working to do just that.
Okay, great, thank you. I think we have time probably for two more.
And it was also my fault that I was a little late. So is there any way we can extend for like at least 5-6 minutes, or do they have another class?
Well, some people have places to go, so I could say if anyone wants to hang around for an extra 5 minutes, let people walk out. So thank you for that. Other questions?
Feel free to ask me anything, guys, like whatever.
Okay, Zara, yes.
And you were talking about how storms were a big part of your story of colonialism and climate change right now for your island. And I was wondering how which more people in the other indigenous tribes deal with the destruction caused by those storms, and so the reparations are in place, or if there are any, and what's the story with moving more inland and where these villages are living.
Yeah, so we read, students read To Hell with Drowning, the Atlantic magazine that you wrote, which I love. And Zara was asking sort of how people are responding to climate change and the pressures about displacement, addressing climate, et cetera, rising sea levels.
Oh yeah, no, there's just been a flurry of work. So, for example, like I was really happy I was able to write that piece because it just like really got a new kind of level of national attention on Pacific Islanders' experiences with climate change. So there's been a ton of connections that we made ever since that article was published. Also, this is something I should just say really quick. Anyone who wants to be connected with other people doing work across, like for example, I'm connected now to so many youth groups, activist groups, like climate justice heroes. Like if you all want to plug in, I mean, even if we're from wherever you live, there's always work. There's work for to be done. So I would be happy to plug you all into work with various groups across the world doing this work. But you should take heart. I mean, despite every like sort of the like immense challenge that we're facing and the sheer scope of the climate crisis. It is so big, but there are so many initiatives going, and we have had a number of domestic, both national and international successes, you know, and there's something in the air, and it's electrifying. It feels different. I mean, and I can say this as a person in the climate justice movement, despite like what we hear, because part of what's the problem with mass media is like, we're always hearing that alarm bell go off. The civilizational alarm bell, meaning, you know, doom is coming and it's around the corner. And it is true, we are in an unforgiving timeline, but there is sort of like an efflorescent rising of so many people doing really exceedingly concrete work to sort of arrest the spread of climate change. And that work is really exciting. And there's so much room for all of you to be a part of it. So, I mean, of course, we can just be in touch after this event and I can be sharing resources with you all.
So maybe you could just add a little bit more to that for our last sort of formal question, and then we'll let if anyone wants to stay for a few minutes afterwards. But you know, one of the questions that a student asked was, what would you say to someone who's losing hope that the fight against climate change will be won? You know, just as I teach about climate change, and I think, you know, we are, yes, it's dire, and we have the greatest opportunity ever. So, you know, how do you approach that work? I mean, obviously there's a lot to feel bad about, but you're driven. So talk to us about what to be hopeful about and how to look forward.
For sure. I think the most important thing that you can do right now, in this moment, right now, is to reframe, to reclaim your sense of time. So what I mean is this. Yes, climate change, you know, as your teacher said, it's dire. And we understand that the stakes are devastatingly high. And we are on a tight, you know, sort of time frame. However, in the end, like, and this is something that feminist authors just wrote about in this beautiful book. You should also all read that book. It's called All We Can Save. It's one of the best pieces of literature that to come out about the climate crisis, period. But the last sentence of that book really sums it up for me. It says, in the end, it is still remarkable to be alive in a moment that matters this much. I mean, it's exhilarating. The current moment, I mean, we can look out and the contours of the world do give us pause, rightfully so. But the present moment is bristling. You know, I can feel it bristle with possibility. I mean, you should all know that. I mean, and the moment you start getting involved in local organizations or national organizations and you start working with people in community, with others, like you will see what I'm talking about, but you cannot see it. You cannot read about that kind of magic. You can only encounter it with with your whole self, like your body and your hands. You have to be in the movement to understand what I'm saying. The most hopeful people that I work with now in 2022 are climate activists. That is ridiculously ironic, right? It is, but there's the most hopeful people alive today are the people who are tackling the climate crisis with the light of their lives. They are devoting all of their attention to it, and it's something about that is magical. And the other thing I want to say is this: the best way to actually feel genuinely hopeful is to sort of understand that a lot of people who talk about hope do it in a way that's kind of like shabby. It's kind of a sad way because they're kind of attaching this notion. I don't like the way a lot of people talk about hope. I like the way author Rebecca Solnit talks about hope. And she does it in this way. She said, the only way we can convince young people today who have so much important work to do to be truly hopeful is to don't disaggregate. So don't separate out hope from uncertainty. Despite whatever all of your friends or all of the mainstream media is telling you, the only truth is about the future is this: it is not fixed. The only thing for sure that we know about the future is that we don't know what's going to happen. We don't. So that means that there is room to act. Cynicism is a lazy form of grief. You know, when we look out at the world now and we see everything that's happening, we have to come correct. And it's like a whole different sort of set of assumptions. So what I encourage you in a sentence is this: I would throw in a trash can everything that you've heard about the notions of optimism or pessimism. They're so useless because they kind of both are escape valves. They're both ways of giving up on the future or excusing yourself from doing any work in the current moment because it presumes that the future is set. The future is not set. There's so many versions of the future, and they're worth fighting for. And there is room for you in this movement. And I welcome all of you to it.
All right, let's give our speaker a big hand. So I'm just going to ask if you want to stay around and ask a couple of questions,
Yeah.
stay where you are. And we'll take a few more minutes. The rest of you, if you could just sort of quickly make your way out. So we'll just give people a minute to transition. So
Ask a couple more of the Q&A.
what's that?
Should we do that? The rest of the questions we have?
We could, I mean, unless people want
Yeah,
specific questions. I can't remember the name of it was a podcast. I heard you on interview about a year and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
Related podcast, the Food Justice podcast. I was like, oh, it is my dream to bring you to Brookline High School.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Roger, right?
Yes. You
No,
have
I'm Oh gosh, no, thank you so much. And I have to apologize profusely. I am never late to these things. But I don't know how. I think with the time I thought it was at 9 p.m. my time, not 8.
No,
So,
I
yeah.
know that the timing is you must be between a lot of different time zones. So
Yeah,
it's fine.
right in Hawaii, yeah.
It's really fine. So the
Yeah.
problem with our high school is students are really busy and they have sports and
Yeah,
this and that.
yeah.
They had to go. So
Okay, no worries. We're good. But yes, Roger, if you need anything in the future, like if you need if other things that I'm up to, I'll just sort of be in touch with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that would be great. I mean, in my climate class, we're going to be doing our oceans unit, and I'm just thinking about people who kind of speak from the perspective you have about small island states and territories and
Yeah.
the organizing that's going on there. So I can follow up with Deval perhaps,
Okay. Yeah.
and that way.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. This was really
Thank
just beautiful.
Thank
I'm like, I'm
so
really
much.
cool. This is the other teacher involved.
Hi, Julian.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Um,
you so much
I
too.
just had a student come up and ask to get the names of the organizations. that you
Yeah,
would
sure.
recommend.
I can try to put that together after my last event in tomorrow, and then I'll so by next week when I'm at my next place, I'll try to email that to Roger, I guess, through Deval or something.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
That would be great.
Yeah, great.
All
Great.
right, take care. Good luck with the rest of your travels.
You
so
too.
much.
Bye.
All right, be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, the recording.